EY-Parthenon is now a 25,000 person global organization operating in more than 120 countries, advising CEOs, boards, private equity firms and governments on their most critical strategic decisions. I'm James O'Dowd, and to explore that journey, I'm joined by EY-Parthenon Global Vice Chair Andrea Guerzoni and Parthenon Group founder Bill Achtmeyer. Bill, I wonder if you could start me off. I just want to go back to the early roots of the business back in 1991. What made you think this was the right moment to launch a new strategy firm? What opportunities did you see to capitalize on?
Well, there were really two fundamental factors. One was a bit of offense, and one was a bit of defense. On the defense side, Bain & Company had just come through a significant restructuring. And I had the pleasure of joining Bain very early in its roots, and had risen to a very senior position, having started the M&A practice. We'd reached a point when Bill Bain asked me to see if I could help sell the company. I came back to Bill and said, we're not going to be able to sell this business. And he said, well, how would you like to be CEO? And I was like, you know, talk about getting the medicine ball. Luckily, I got the medicine ball for 24 hours. And Mitt and Bill called me the next day and said, your first decision as CEO is to decide whether you want to stay CEO. Yeah. We're restructured. But I said, I want to go off and do my own thing. So the second driving factor was probably at 36 years old, a little bit too much ambition. We had two sort of guiding principles. Yeah. One was we wanted there to be long-term relationships, what we called solid gold relationships, that even if we weren't working for the client on a paid basis, they would feel as if we continued to care about them and their success. And hopefully we did good enough work that they would come back to us when the time called. And the second was we wanted to hire the A team. Yeah. Because it's a talent business. Yeah. You know, this has always been a talent business. It will continue to be a talent business. But getting the best talent was absolutely critical. And it was in the middle of as I looked at it at the time, it was a modest recession back in 1991 in the George H.W. Bush years. My wife thought I was absolutely out of my mind. Yeah. And said, you know, you've got 4 kids, they're in private schools, you know, how the heck are you going to make it all work? And I said, don't worry, you know, we'll get there. And fortunately, we did. Yeah.
We're going to start with the business as you scaled. And bringing that forward to today, Andrea, maybe we'll answer the question a bit, but when you look at the business at a global scale, 25,000 people now, I mean, what elements of that original Parthenon DNA that Bill kind of describes there, you know, still hold true and matter most to you as the business leader?
Yeah, James, as you know, I mean, when our paths crossed, I mean, EY had already developed this service line called Transaction Advisory Services, which was already in the range of the $2.5 billion turnover, so it was already big for 2014, and it was mainly M&A, valuation, diligence, restructuring kind of business on a global scale already. So a lot of discipline, a lot of focus on deals. So all these features, this mindset aimed at solving the most complex, the most unexpected problems that your clients can come up with creativity, using your ingenuity, and with one fundamental aim, which is really create value, solving the problem from an intellectual point of view. That's something that has remained in our DNA and actually has nurtured what is today our strategy and transformation business, and actually spread across the entire 25,000 strong organization.
I'm really interested in the history of the industry and just get your perspective, Bill, if that's all right. I mean, how has strategy consulting broadly changed in your career from the work you used to do back then, the way you used to advise business leaders, to what you see in the industry now?
Well, the biggest change by far is the pace
Yeah.
of change that has taken place on the technology side. Now, of course, you have AI and GenAI, and I think there's no question that that compresses the time frame in which you can get good information, so long as you properly vet it and have the right algorithms and so forth. And is it going to be mostly a cost opportunity or a revenue opportunity? My view is the cost opportunity is for sure the case. It's the revenue one that's more interesting.
Yeah.
And when you think of what big data and AI can do, it will be able to understand the consumer and buyer at a level we've never seen before. That having been said, all of that great information distilled as quickly as it can be distilled, you need somebody to figure out how does that work for that company,
Yes.
in that industry, in that period of time. And you can never forget that there is a bridge that needs to be walked over from having great analysis to great recommendations. At the end of the day, when you sit in the room with the CEO, they're not wanting to look at the slides. They're wanting to find out, what do you really think I should do? And that's the judgment and trust side.
I mean, a question I had the other day from a client was exactly that. Like, in 3 to 5 years, what are clients increasingly going to come to consulting firms for? And similarly, how are we producing judgment and trust if parts of the traditional pyramid of a consulting firm are increasingly being condensed by AI?
There's no question that hiring at the, quote, bottom of the pyramid may not be as significant as it was certainly in the days when I was building Parthenon, or back in the days when I was at Bain & Company. That having been said, hiring really smart undergraduates around the world who are native to technology and not immigrants to technology will be important, because they understand how that technology is shifting. And so you need that brain power to supplement the information that you're getting. I think that the time that people will gain, because you're able to get to the meat of the coconut, if you will, more rapidly, is what do you do in terms of the scenario planning? Because now you have the tools by which to evaluate the future much more comprehensively than you would have otherwise.
And just going back to your point on talent, and I think specifically about young consultants or people who are thinking about getting into the industry, I mean, what's your advice for them in terms of the skills that they should be doubling down on?
I mean, we keep bringing in people, what we are looking at are people who are very high in EQ, and they can really understand how a team can work, because all these kind of projects are characterized by a multitude of different skill set, cultures, competencies. If you overlay the geographical aspect, I mean, the vast majority of our clients with multinational clients would entail tens of different locations. So we need to have people who can actually operate in the complexities of these time zones, cultures, and also geopolitical environments. So that kind of mindset is fundamental. And then we want people who can actually merge the technology part with the sector and the domain expertise, so that the partner of the future, it's a blend of these things. So we are building this new blend of characteristics into our profile through training, on-the-job training, learning, and actually exposing our people through a variety of different experiences, because this is what really opens their minds. So it's an exciting moment, I think, for these people, because at the end, when we run our training, our courses, and we are very in favor of in-person courses. I mean, we want really the physical. I think it's very important to mix online and in-person courses. They actually find themselves in a incredibly variegated environment with a lot of different personality, which mirrors very well the complexity of the business environments when they are on a mission.
The one thing that I worry about for firms is with remote learning
Yes, I was going
and remote, sort of time out of the office, if you will. Are you getting that apprenticeship to the level that you'd like to? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
There's no replacement for the impromptu meeting with a senior person that a junior person has the opportunity to say, hey, what do you think about this? That's not going to happen if you're scheduled on Zoom from 7:30 in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. It's just not going to happen. Now, there are ways to factor that in, and everyone has their own point of view on that, and I'm not suggesting you always have to be 5 days in the office, but you're not going to run a successful consulting firm that's remote. Not in my opinion.
100%. I mean, at the end, if you are not in a position to read a room, to understand the body language, to spend time with your clients, to try to understand the internal politics, so outside a scheduled meeting, you need to be physically there. I mean, there's no other possibility to gain all these insights. For a young professional, I think the possibility to work alongside other professionals from different backgrounds, different cultures, and mingling with them, it's also one of the most exciting part of this early stage of their career. I think the human factor remains a fundamental aspect in every business, in this one in particular being really all about trust and personal knowledge. So it's key.